As one mother started noticing the strain on her relationship with her daughter, she decided to record the journey. Debra Mandel is a psychologist based in California. Her latest book is focused on how to navigate an ever-changing mother-daughter relationship. The book is called Sassy and Rude, Her New Attitude. And Debra joins me now. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. Debra, we're just going to start deep. What was your relationship like with your mother?
Not good, I must confess. Yes, my mom was an immigrant, as was my dad, and came to this. Actually, they met in Toronto, Canada, and they were married there, and they moved out to the U.S. with very much of nothing and started a family. But I don't think my mom really wanted to be a mom. She was such an independent spirit, and I mean, I know she did love us, my sister and I, but I think that she was just so resentful of her own childhood and she never really dealt with her own anger and issues beneath the surface. And so she was angry a lot. I could never please her. And I was one of those super sensitive young girls who just wanted to do everything for my mom. You know, whether it was for her birthday or her Mother's Day or whatever it was, I would save all of my pennies and my allowance to buy her the best gift. And no matter what I did, it just never seemed good enough. So I had a lot of emotional wounds myself and a lot of shame. And then sadly, as I was an adult and I really wanted to seek some healing with my mom, she was not open to it. And she passed away at the young age of 58. At that point, I had my daughter, who was about two, and I was in my early 30s. And so I vowed to be a different kind of mom and make sure that my daughter got the love and all the attention and stuff that she deserved. And lo and behold, created our own set of problems.
So how would you characterize those set of problems that you have with your daughter?
Well, currently, I would say that she and I are in probably the best place we've ever been in. It's interesting because she's now the age at which she's the age at which I was when my mother passed. So I know that she really never had a relationship with her grandmother on that side. And she, you know, really wanted that. So we have worked very hard to heal our relationship, but it's been a rather challenging road at times, just like it is for most moms and daughters. We had a really rough time in her teenage years and young adulthood, but we've done a lot of growth, and that's a lot of what inspired the writing of this book, Sassy and Rude, Her New Attitude.
What do you think it is about the mother-daughter dynamic that makes it so fraught?
Moms and daughters are notorious for wanting to be really close, almost like best friends or twin sisters. And there's a lot of pressure to have that oozing connection, which is often not really what is needed for good parenting. And so many times moms will, and I talk about this in the book, being the too nice mom, that we go overboard, we do the pendulum swing. Whatever we didn't get in childhood, we want to give to them in their childhood. And as they grow up, oftentimes they become a little bit entitled and not necessarily as empathetic as we would have wanted them to be because we were doing all of that as moms and we wanted to give them everything that they didn't really learn enough about boundaries and how to also give that back. So it becomes very conflicted at times. And also, the other piece that's really important is mothers and daughters have a different separation individuation process than, let's say, mothers and sons or fathers and daughters. And fathers and sons also have an equally challenging time because when you're the same gender, oftentimes there is a greater need for individuation, a separation, needing to feel like a separate identity. So this is sometimes it's a little bit more of a challenge.
Can you talk more about that individuation process? So you talked a little bit about what it is. What is it and how does it work in this dynamic between a mother and a daughter? What makes it more challenging?
Absolutely. So the separation is literally, I am different, I am separate from you. Individuation is more, I am an individual, I am a different person. So we take characteristics of our parents and we ideally as adults, we say, you know, that I really like, that worked. Let me carry more of that. Or that didn't really, I don't really like that so much. Let me leave that behind. But that's a really big process. And why it's so challenging for mothers and daughters is also there is this pressure. I'm sort of the hallmark image of moms and daughters is that they're super close, they know everything about each other, but that doesn't really align with the developmental process, which requires us to really push away at a certain point so that we can really identify who we are as an individual.
If a mother is listening to this and that too nice mum syndrome maybe resonates with them, what can they start to do to get away from that?
Good question. So first, I want to just define what the word nice actually means,
Hmm.
because a lot of people they interchange it with the word kindness, but they're not the same. The word nice actually comes from the definition of pretending not to know. So if you can imagine that you're being told to be nice constantly, and in our generation, that's what we were told by our moms, our dads, by society. Be nice, young lady, be nice, which is basically saying, zip it, silence yourself. I will tell you a cute little story when my daughter was 4 years old and we were at the supermarket and we were checking out, and there was a gentleman in front of us, and my daughter reaches over, points to him, and says, "Mommy, that's the biggest nose I've ever seen." And I, being a little bit mortified, oh gosh, where is this going to go? What am I supposed to do? And the gentleman was so humble and so amazing. He says, "I know. Would you like to touch it?" And there my daughter was, totally innocent, just touching his nose, and he was laughing and she was laughing, and it was just what it was, just like as she had seen the shiniest red wagon that she had ever seen. She was just pointing it out completely innocently. So I had in my mind, I was saying, "Oh gosh, you got to tell her to be nice, be nice." And I said, "No, that's not what I want to teach her in this moment. I want to teach her, be sensitive to other people and what you're saying." But her innocence, her agenda was not to be cruel or to be shaming. It was simply, "I noticed this." So I left that word nice. I wanted to leave that word nice behind and really practice kindness. The too nice mom, however, is just that. They walk around oftentimes not identifying who they are, what they need, what they are about as individuals as well, often tormented by unhealed wounds themselves and not knowing how to heal those. And then that translates into intergenerational trauma in their relationship with their daughter. So it's really important to make sure to heal those wounds. And that's a big chunk of what the book is about is, you can be a really kind person, but you don't want to be too nice because it doesn't really get you anywhere.
And how would the individuation process between mother and daughter differ between mother and son, for example? What's like a key difference?
Well, a key difference is that the son usually doesn't see mom as much of a threat as invading his own identity because there's already that very big distinction between the two of them. Whereas a mother and daughter, there isn't that much of a differentiation. So that's what the developmental process sort of pushes for internally is to, that's why you hear a lot of people say, "Oh, my son was super easy, but my daughter, oh my gosh, that was a challenge like you'd never believe." And so it's just different,
I'm
but
going to
it
get
doesn't make it bad. It doesn't mean it's bad. It's just a little bit more challenging.
I'm going to get at you for a follow-up interview with mothers and sons because that's a whole other different topic area. But back to your book. So that's the mother. I want to focus on what you talk about with the daughter because there's something really interesting you talk about. I think it's chapter 6 about daughters and their need the idea of identifying their sassy, quote unquote, sassy factor. And you talk about daughters needing to take on protective armor. So tell me more about why daughters feel the need to do that.
Yeah, so a lot of times our daughters, we believe that we're giving them everything they need, but we're really not paying attention to who they are individually. We're almost trying to give them what it is that we thought that we needed that we didn't get enough of when we were kids. So it turns into a dilemma for the daughter because, daughters generally love their moms so much unless their moms were terribly abusive or narcissistic, then really they're seeking that attention and approval as well, but it gets really messy and really murky. And so sometimes daughters, they don't know what to do, they don't know what to say, they don't know how to talk about it, so they just develop these sassy behaviors like, "You know what, like, I don't want to talk to you now, mom, leave me alone, this is not your role, gosh, can't you stop from invading my life?" And they start saying things that can be really nasty, which often then yields the mom to retaliate because she's hurt and she develops her own protective armor. So it goes both ways. Both the daughter and the mom can end up with this protective armor where they're shielding themselves from what they perceive the other is going to do to hurt them. And it's not often conscious, but sometimes it is. Sometimes there are situations where moms and daughters, the daughter will say, "Mom, I don't want you in my life anymore because you're just too invasive, or you don't listen to me, or you're too controlling, or you do this, you do that." And so moms really need to take a step back and take a look at, what do you want in your relationship with your daughter, particularly once she's an adult, because it's a whole different ballgame. You are no longer responsible for her behavior, for her actions, or any of that. So now it's the time to actually let go of that control and learn how to have a new and unique relationship with this young blossoming adult. Or if somebody's listening now and their daughter is 50 years old and you're 75, it's never too late.
What I really appreciated about that chapter is that you identify the kind of emotional wound underlying that particular type of protective armor, and you divide the protective armor down into 5 subtypes. So I'm going to list 5 of them, and I'd love to go through a couple of them just for our listeners to
Sure.
get a sense of behaviors and the emotional wounds that are underlying it. So there's the know-it-all, there's the entitled princess, the creative genius, the indecisive, and the DIY gal. So let's go through a couple of them if that's okay. Let's start
Sure.
with the entitled princess. What kind of behaviors would you see exhibited in this subtype? And then what's the emotional wound that's underlying this behavior?
Yeah, so the desire in that armor is really to protect from sometimes feeling very undeserving inside. And so the entitlement is just as it says, entitled princess is me, 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 me. Give it all to me. You don't matter. I'm the only one who matters. And again, the wound there is that maybe I don't feel like I'm good enough. Maybe I don't feel like I'm enough. The contrary component of that for some um, young ladies and women that have this entitlement thing is that I was so overindulged, I don't even know any better. I don't know that I don't deserve more than somebody else or that more than my fair share. And so it becomes kind of can be an annoying characteristic for a mom who's really wanting at some point to get a little bit back from her daughter. And the daughter just gets very angry if there's any limits that are set. And so that's a very challenging one to overcome.
And so, what's a key starting point, like a step that a mother could take in order to address that kind of behavior?
Well, it would look something like this. Hey, sweetie, I love you so much, and I have wanted in my life to give you everything that I could. And I'm also recognizing at this point in my life that I matter too, and I'm important. And we're going to start having a little bit of a change in the ways in which we communicate with each other and how we can deliver similar experiences of love, but also with some boundaries around that. So it's really opening up a dialogue. Now, that doesn't mean that the daughter is going to be open and receptive to that. She may get very angry, actually. A lot of times when somebody has gotten more than their fair share of the pie, and then you say, you know what, I think I'd like to have my half, they get irate because that's a change. That's not, they didn't know that they were getting more. They just figured that that was the norm. So it's something to be very patient around and to be as communicative in a loving and grounded way as possible, which again does require the mom to do her own work. That's a big portion of my book, Sassy and Rude, is we have to identify our own wounds and make sure that we heal those so that we're not translating those and recreating those in our relationship with our daughters.
Let's do one more, the know it all.
I think we all know a know-it-all.
Yes.
And again,
I
that's
think I might
that's
be one. My poor mother. Like, as I was reading this, I'm like, oh my God, my poor mum. I do regularly call her to apologize for everything between the ages of like 6 to 25. But anyway, continue.
okay. Well, the know-it-all is just that. Again, it's like, okay, I got the answers. Maybe it was that the mom was too intrusive and never let the daughter actually have a voice of her own or to be able to identify things that she felt competent and confident in. And so she needs to assert that right to say, hey, I know this. I'm okay. And it's a defense against feeling inadequate and wanting to be seen as somebody who's important, intelligent, and valuable. And so with the know-it-all, you want to say, you know what? I know that you want to really kind of reinforce the idea that I do know that you are super smart. And I'm just saying this as an opinion. I'm just saying this as a thought. But be really careful about that because sometimes know-it-alls had moms who were really pushy, who did not let them really have a say-so in anything. So they developed that as a protective gear to say, I'm not stupid.
You started off, Deborah, by talking about your own relationship with your mother, and you just mentioned like so much of your book is about healing your own emotional wound as a mother. So how did you go about doing that work for yourself? Like, what was the big emotional wound that was left behind by your relationship with your mum, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, so for me, it was shame, and I think that's true of a lot of people. I really felt ashamed. I didn't feel so much like that. oftentimes felt like I just wasn't valuable. I just wasn't important. I wasn't worthy. I wasn't deserving. And in hindsight, I had to really look at my mom in her own context. That was a big part of the healing, was identifying where my holes were internally and learning to fill those up and with self-love and compassion and understanding. But it also helped me to put my mom in a context. And that's what I wish for daughters also, is that if you're really angry with your mom, if you're having a struggle and you think that she doesn't understand you or appreciate you, try to look at her from the perspective of how was she raised. So that's what I did with my mom, because I really saw this very hurt young little girl inside of her that just didn't really know how to come out and heal. Even though I tried, when I became a psychologist, I had all these ideas and thoughts. Mom, we could do this. Let's do this. Why? Maybe you can go to therapy. Yada yada. She wouldn't have it. She was too closed off from it. But I did learn to really forgive and love her in a different way, because I know she tried her best. Know she did the best she could.
What do you hope readers will take away from your book, or listeners to this conversation?
Well, I hope that it builds a bridge between the mother-daughter relationship. It's not a fix-all, it's not a heal-all, but it is a starting point. It plants some seeds for a healing tree, and that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that the takeaways are, oh, I learned what I am responsible for, what I'm not, what I can control, what I can't, how to heal my own wounds so that I can practice these sassy exercises and become able to better love myself, and then translate that into a more fluid relationship with my daughter and an invitation to her to do the healing with me. And at the end of the book, I actually have what I did sort of as an add-on, which I really loved, was I had several people who I'm very close to, ask them these series of questions, and then some of their friends about these were daughters, adult daughters, things about their mothers that they love, things about their mothers that they wish would change, things they wish would never change, what was the one thing that they could do that would help them heal. And I thought I was going to get a lot of angry responses. I didn't. I got these beautiful, heartfelt responses about the yearning and the longing in the daughters, with the right stuff to be able to build that bridge and create that healing tree.
And just finally, Deborah, it's Mother's Day weekend this weekend, and you were talking about that societal pressure, on mothers and daughters to be like best friends, like the Gilmore Girls or something like that. And often, in many cases, that's not the case, and that pressure only adds to kind of the shame and the guilt. So, for listeners who perhaps don't have a great relationship with their mother, or who have lost their mother. And this weekend is actually kind of a difficult time for them because they don't have what we kind of project as the ideal mother-daughter relationship. What advice would you have for them to get them through this weekend and this moment?
Sure. If there's full estrangement, then I would say you just have to do your grieving, and then I would say seek some professional help and other resources. My book's not going to be enough for that, because there's so much water under that bridge that, a self-help book couldn't even begin to crack that open. So it may be a sad day, and then you look for things to be grateful for, and maybe you use it as an opportunity to learn what it is that what went wrong? What might you want to do differently? And that goes for both daughter and mother. But for most moms who maybe it's a bit of a challenging time, maybe you're on the edges a little bit and it's not so cool, use the weekend as a time to reflect, and maybe send out a note or two that just says, I love you and I would love to heal, if there's ever that opportunity.
How old is your daughter now, Deborah?
She is 32.
So at this point, can you like exhale and think, all right, we made it? Or do you still feel like with every stage of that mother-daughter relationship, there's new things to conquer?
There are always going to be new things to conquer, because life changes, right? Things, maybe, someday she'll have a child. Maybe she'll get married. Maybe she won't. Maybe she'll live an alternative lifestyle. I don't really know. I know that I learned a long time ago, when she was 18 and she says, Mom, I'm going to hitchhike around the country alone. I said, oh, I know this is going to be a journey. Wow, is this going to be a journey? And it has. She's been all over the planet. She got stuck during COVID in Dahab, Egypt, all by herself. She lived there for 2 years. She's a trooper. She's resilient. I never know what adventure she's going to bring. We're actually going on a cruise to Alaska at the end of the month, and we'll spend some really beautiful quality time together. And we'll have long, deep conversations. She'll tell me things that I didn't do right, and she wishes I would have done. And we'll have those deep conversations, and it'll be awesome. So it'll always be a journey. I'm ready for it.
Deborah, so lovely to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a beautiful weekend, and Happy Mother's Day to you.
Thank you. And to you.
Thank you so much.
Debra Mandel is a psychologist and author of a new book. The book is called Sassy and Rude, Her New Attitude.